Hello, everyone. My name is Joe D'Souza, and I take pleasure of introducing today's speaker, Professor Emanuela Rondi. Professor Emanuela Rondi is an associate professor in management at the University of Bergamo in Italy. She is associated with the Family Business Network International as an academic coordinator for the Next Generation Summit. She also serves as a board member and a permanent chair of the Research Development Program of the International Family Enterprise Research Academy. Her research has been published in top-ranked international journals such as Organization Science, Journal of Management, Entrepreneurship Theory and Practice, Journal of Management Studies, Strategic Entrepreneurship Journal, and Strategic Organization. Additionally, she is a member of the review boards of Entrepreneurship Theory and Practice, Journal of Family Business Strategy, Sage Business Case, and Pearson Management and Marketing Case. Professor Emanuela is an international research coordinator of the Family Office Observatory at Politecnico di Milano, Italy, a research affiliate of the Center for Family Business Management at Free University of Bolzano, Italy, and a member of the Academic Advisory Board at the International Family Enterprise Center at Taylor's University, Malaysia. That's a brief bio about our speaker today. Over to you, Emanuela, ma'am, to continue the proceeding.
Well, thanks a lot for the introduction, Joe, and thanks to Steve for inviting me today. Can you hear me well?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So it's a great pleasure to be here today for presenting a study that I'm working with some co-authors who are Vittoria Magrelli, Francesco De Bellis, and Alfredo De Massis. This is a study that has involved us since 2018, and it's a qualitative case study, single case study, and it deals with the relationship between craft, innovation, entrepreneurial development, and of course, family firms. So if I'm able to share the screen now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Great. So the title of this project is Blooming the Family Firm, the entrepreneurial development of a small business into a conglomerate across generations. Our research started from the literature on craft firms. This interest started already when, together with Irma Erdogan, we worked on the paper that we published on entrepreneurship theory and practice back in 2020, where we studied Turkish craft family firms. And we realized that there was a strong relationship between the elements of craft, tradition, legacy, and the elements of family firms that are so much attached to their past, but they still need to develop, evolve throughout the future. So craft firms define it as a humanistic approach to work that embraces human involvement in craftsmanship, are depicted in the literature as embodying the notion of tradition, authenticity, uniqueness, and are seen as almost antithetical to the industrial production, which is instead linked to machineries and standardized process. So we observe that in this literature, there is kind of tension between what is considered pure craft, so much related with craftsmanship, handmade work, and art, elements of art, and industrial production, so related to machinery, serial production, more quantity than elements that are distinctive of the product of the craft, of the pure craft. So from this tension, we realize that craft firms are therefore particularly relevant context for examining the strategic dimension of entrepreneurship, as they need to look backwards in order to preserve those elements and traits that are seen and rooted in the past and the tradition and the ancient ways of doing things, but also the forward-looking perspective, as they are businesses and therefore they need still to be competitive and staying in the market. So these firms are characterized by an entrepreneurial culture within that support the advantage and opportunity seeking through the ability to strategically manage and coordinate resources. And these resources are very holistic, so they relate to tangible resources, meaning the aspect that relate to material, raw material. The craft is especially keen on manipulating materials, and also element of the human capital, knowing how to do things, the element of artistic traits that the craftsmanship is linked to, but also social aspects, as usually the ability of the craft to be recognized as such is also related to the followers of these craftsmen that create a crowd surrounding this, recognizing the distinctive and singular element of the production that they develop. So in terms of what are considered craftsmanship and its relationship with family firms, this potential tension between pure craft and industrial production, it's something that relates a lot with what we are discussing in the family firm field, in the tension between past and future, in the tension between tradition and innovation. Therefore, family firms that are here defined as firms in which the family influences strategic decision with the desire to pass it on to future generations. So there is this strong element of the future making, but also the element that are rooted back in the past and in the generations. Engaging craft work as a form of collective knowledgeable doings. And how we recognize this element is to consider, for instance, for those family firms that have been long established, so they have a history that goes on for generation and generation, and we have many in Europe, especially in Italy, we have this tracing back element of the legacy of the past, especially related to the ancestors, for instance, those that founded the family firm. And each generation of family leaders plays a delicate role as custodians of this legacy. So how do we treat this legacy? How do we take care of this legacy without corrupting it, but still being linked to the possibility that craft work is still linked to where we come from? However, the risk of being so much rooted in this legacy and past is to be also steeped in nostalgia and romanticism that limits the competitive advantage that this firm can extract, because it creates paralysis in decision. And very often it creates an element of keeping it small and preserving its dimension in order to preserve its authenticity. So very often craft firms are hampered in growing and developing entrepreneurially because they want to be very close to the origins and what makes them distinctive. So in some sense, the literature has also recognized this tension between the pure craft and the innovative technological evolution. But in the family firm, we have the advantage of having found a reconciling approach between tradition and innovation, which is the innovation to tradition strategy. So there are already elements that recognize the ability of family firms to create a link between past and future, between what is considered as linking in a backward looking and in the forward looking. So the positioning of these studies was located in the need to move beyond this nostalgic idea of craft in terms of craft in the past or just pure craft, by making a new perspective in the forward looking of craft imaginaries that enable the forward movement that gives rise to new possibilities. So craft is interesting element of craft that are distinctive in the relationship that the firm has its own element of art and also this manipulation of materials. The link also with the territory is very important, usually in the craft elements. But at the same time, not limiting the firm to this situation, but opening up opportunities to preserve tradition, but also to foster the entrepreneurial development. Well, however, research in the current state is still grounded in a very static perspective of craft. So you are either a pure craft firm, or you are instead a technological, advanced type of innovative firm in an industrial type of transformation. Therefore, our study is tackling this specific connection. So how craft can evolve along the entrepreneurial development of the family firm. So is it possible for a family firm to stick to the craft elements that are distinctive and iconic and also are related to the identity of the family firm, but at the same time evolve and grow entrepreneurially? So not be limited by in the dimension, in the entrepreneurial aspects, only by being a pure craft firm. In order to tackle this research question, we investigated with a qualitative research that is very consistent also with the type of research question that we are targeting. And we selected a revelatory case study, a single case, in this firm that is named Thun. Thun is a family firm, third generation family firm. They produce these objects that are small collectible objects that you can put in your house. And they have the form of angels or teddy bears. We will see some of them in the next slide. They started from this angel that was developed by the mother looking to her children sleeping as little angels with the open mouth. So she was inspired by the family trait, which is her children sleeping, and she transformed that in pieces of art. This is where the story started. And this company has evolved throughout generation in the last 70 years into a global conglomerate. Now it is a very big firm, which is still fully owned by the family. It's a conglomerate because it's a collection of businesses and also of other organizations consistent with what we now call the family ecosystem. So they have a family office, they have a foundation, they have multiple firms, and the family council. So they have been able to develop, but still they are very keen to be connected with their craft elements that it was where they started from. And we were intrigued by how they did that, because basically they are a kind of exception. They were not limited by the craft, but they remained craft linked, craft rooted. To investigate this company, well, we started the investigation in 2018, collecting data. We analyzed more than 500 archival documents that include reports, newspaper articles, books that they've written and someone else wrote for them, and websites, many different secondary data. We also collected the site visits. We visited their quarters. We went to the Christmas markets where they have small shops, and it was also run by the Thun Magic. And also we visited the retail shops. We also collected more than 20 interviews and some semi-ethnographic techniques, because we went into some laboratories by molding the material in order to develop this clay type of objects. These data were also analyzed following the traditional recommendation from qualitative research. So we went through historical reconstruction, understanding the evolution of the three generations over time and the salient moments the business went through. We also conducted the temporal bracketing, understanding which were the most salient phases. And among them, we identified the craft configuration. We stemmed from this literature on craft configurations, like pure craft is one of these configurations, technical craft is another configuration. And we also elaborated more because we realized that the taxonomy relevant in the literature was not enough to embrace the elements, the configuration of craft that we were observing. And so, therefore, we also investigated the transitions across craft configuration, because the literature depicts so far the different types of craft, but has not analyzed how a firm can evolve from one type of craft to the next. And finally, we went through the abstraction of the integrative model. Our findings, well, we started from the historical reconstruction. So here there is a timeline that stems from the 1950, when the company was founded by Lene Thun, who was the founder together with her husband, Otman Thun. Then this is considered the phase one, so the pure craft, where they created that quarter, and later on in 1978, they welcomed the son, Peter Thun, which is the second generation leader of the family business. He stayed in charge for more than almost 40 years. And during this period, we isolated 2 different phases. This is interesting because at the beginning, we thought that the phases of craft were following the generation. So phase 1, pure craft, phase 2, something related to the evolution of the industrial craft. And then when Simon Thun generation 3 came in 2017, we assumed that this was a third type of phase. But we soon realized that this type of distinction didn't really work because there were shades in the middle. Especially there was a change between phase 2 and phase 3 in the middle. And this was also a situation when Lene Thun died, so the founder died, and there was this twist in the type of craft that the company was able to identify. So at the end, we identified 4 different craft configurations, and now we go through them. The first is pure craft. So here we have some quotes that we collected from our data that relate to this first phase, like Rhodes started in Bolzano, which is a very tiny city close to the Austrian border of Italy, which is a territory where there is a kind of melting pot between the Austrian culture and the Italian culture. And this is also an element that rooted the family business so much into the local culture, because it's very distinctive from the rest of the Italian culture and also distinctive from the rest of the Austrian culture. So the roots in the territory are very important for this family firm. And this quote says, Rhodes started in Bolzano in the middle of the last century, when at the hands of Lene Thun, who modeled an early ceramic angel watching her children sleeping, the tale of an extraordinary fairy tale began. And also, there are some employees that commented when they were used to work in the atelier with the countess. Well, the founder is a countess, so Lene Thun was a countess. And they said, when the countess arrives at the atelier in the morning, her presence is felt even before meeting her. She would literally vibrate with energy. Then she would put on her white gown and get to work. So here you can really see the element of artist. There is an artist that is the one who creates, and the whole surrounding of the business is created in order to support her creation. She is the artist, and the atelier is a kind of compensation of what she needs to develop. Then Peter Thun enters in the business, and he is not an artist. This is what he says about himself. He's not so well able to mold as his mother, but he has a very entrepreneurial mindset. And here is when the company moves from a pure craft into a technical craft. So the Thun Group, which sells the famous angels and ceramic worldwide, was among the first South Tyrolean business, which is the area, the region where the company has origins, entitled to invest in China. So you see here there is a strong transition from creating businesses, creating in a small atelier these pieces of art into a kind of technical craft where these little objects are designed still in the same company, but then they are serially produced elsewhere, especially in Asia at this stage. So Thun became an international reality, an Italian leader in ceramic product and quality gifts. Every piece is a little masterpiece, designed, created in Italy with a craft passion. So here there is still the element of craft, which is in design, in the creation of new objects that are then reproduced elsewhere, still handmade. So it's technical in the sense that they are still handmade, hand decorated, but elsewhere. Then we have a third phase after the death of Lene Thun. And this is the phase that we named narrative craft, because the company expands in retail. So they create retail shops that are directly owned and managed, but also they create Thun Cafe, where you can have a Thun experience surrounded by these ceramics, where you can have your coffee in the cups that are designed with the Thun style. And basically it becomes a fairy tale world. They even created a show, and to represent this element of craftsmanship, still linking all the businesses that they created under this idea of the tunic. They even created an adjective to describe it. You see that there is element of consistency across what they are doing, even though the businesses are very different. So they started from being a production type of business, and they evolved into something that is more a fairy tale type of business. And the fil rouge that connects all of them is this fairy tale world. Finally, there is the ecosystemic craft, the last phase. Simon Thun enters in the business. So he is the third generation. He has lived abroad. He studied businesses, but still he wants to keep strong the connection with the craft element. And how they did it? Basically, they evolved the family firm into a business family. So they created this Lenet group that comes from the Lene, who was the founder, the grandmother of Simon. The element of net, because it's a network of companies, but also the element of T, the Thun family. So you see that there is embedded in the name of the group, there is the origin, the network of companies, and the family name. And they created different businesses. For instance, they created this Lax Pet, which is a business that is for objects for pets, but still linked to the Thun style. So they still feel very much attached to the craft. And they also launched a foundation in the memory of the founder, Lene Thun, a foundation that it's devoted for social impact. And they create laboratories for clay molding in hospitals for children. So they still have this connection with their past and connection with their element of craftsmanship, but this was not limiting the entrepreneurial development. It was instead a trade that connects the network of companies, and it was a boost for this development, identifying opportunities and embracing these opportunities through the Thun style. So now we were in the phase of identifying these different 4 phases, but this was not a real theoretical contribution that we made. It was just a descriptive, and still we identified 2 new types of craft configuration, but we want to go more in depth in that. So we identified the transition phase. So how this company, how this family firm was able to move from one type configuration to the other. So how they were able to move from pure to technical craft, from technical to narrative craft, and from narrative to ecosystemic craft. And we realized that despite the elements were different across the 4 phases in the transition, there were some mechanisms that repeated themselves. So the company was distilling some elements from the past tradition, so taking them out and diverting, like changing something that was in their past. At the same time, they were diluting with new elements. For instance, it's in the phase 2nd transition, in the phase from 2 to 3, they went into retail, they went into licensing. So they brought in some elements from the context, also in terms of economic development that were surrounding the landscape and the environment wherein this business is located. But they were also dropping some elements. For instance, in transitioning from phase 1 to phase 2, they had to drop the handmade aspect and also the local route as they internationalized and they started the industrial production. In the phase from the transition from phase 2 to phase 3, they left the product focus in order to expand the Thun world. So these mechanisms were at the core of what enabled this family firm to evolve from the atelier into the conglomerate, and mastering this aspect by not being too much attached to the past, but being entrepreneurial, able to develop and not being hampered, but at the same time keep connection with your roots, made this company able to still being considered as a craft firm and being recognized. All the press that we collected refers to them as the master of craft still today, although they are a conglomerate, but at the same time not being hampered in the evolution. So this is the element, the grounded model that we developed at the end. So the theoretical elaboration that we elaborated, starting from the end craft, so the pure craft, we distilled these 4 different mechanisms that they were repeated over time across the different phases And at the end, we basically, the different phases encompass the previous one by eliminating some aspects, diluting it with some other, distilling some elements and deserting others, but still being consistent. So that if you see a picture like this, nowadays you still recognize this is Thun because the product rights, for instance, are still the same. So in conclusion, what are the contributions that we want to develop out of this study? First of all, we developed some contribution to the craft work literature by moving away from a static view of craft work and configuration into a dynamic view where configuration can evolve over time. And by doing so, we also identify two new types of craft configuration, which are the narrative craft and the ecosystemic craft. Second, we contribute to the family business literature by revealing the entrepreneurial development that has allowed this family firm that at the beginning was a family atelier into a family entrepreneurial ecosystem. And also we recognize a new way to move from innovation to tradition beyond the product innovation. So beyond the product development toward the product innovation and the strategy for innovation related to the product toward a more entrepreneurial aspect of connecting tradition and innovation. And finally, we contribute to the imaginaries literature. So we consider tradition as a means to reimagine how things could be in the future, and also involving not only product, but the entire entrepreneurial strategy. And by doing so, we go beyond the idea of craft configuration as only attributed to handmade product, the pure craft we stem from. But we still encompass spaces, processes, relationships that surround craft people in their work. So if you think where we stem from, the fact that there was an artist, which was Lene, and all the atelier that was surrounding her in producing. So now we have at the center, we have Thun, and the world is supporting them to keep being tunic somehow. And this is it. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I look forward for questions and further suggestions.
Lovely, excellent, Emanuela. Very nice. Excellent. So is this a paper which has already been published, or you are in the process of publishing it, Emanuela?
It's in the review process.
Okay, okay, all right.
So maybe there are some things that will change, but it's in the process. It's in the review process.
Which journal is this in?
It's an ABS4 journal.
Okay, all right. Emanuela, if you can just go back to your slides, I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, sure. Let me share the screen again. Yes.
Yeah, if you can just go back to that, the 4 stages process. Yeah. So very, very interesting model where you're talking about, over time, this transition happening with dropping, distilling, diverting, diluting, and dropping. So in this 3rd phase, what is the meaning of the fact that they have dropped the brand focus, and what have they started in turn? That's one question. And how
you mean the brand focus?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can understand the handmade local roots being dropped, the product focus being dropped. But what is the meaning of brand focus being dropped is one. And then how do you define this ecosystemic craft? And is this more aligned with the sustainability? Is that what they're moving towards?
Okay.
Yeah.
As in relation to the brand focus, what they are doing is, first of all, renaming the business, not renaming the business, but evolving from being a Thun family into this Lenet group. So it was not only Thun focus as the brand, but they enlarged the number of brands they refer to. For instance, the pet project, the pet business, its name is Lux Pet. It's not Thun Pet. So they enlarged the brands that they relate to. They also went through acquisitions, and they kept the name of the original business, meaning
so
they didn't
in marketing terms, it's like an umbrella brand. That's
yes.
what they've done. Or
yeah.
or a house of brands, sorry. Or a
It's
house
more a house of brands. It's more a house of brands, but still, Thun also became an umbrella brand, because they went from just creating these bears and angels, and also creating like T-shirt power banks with the figures that were
various
distinctive
kinds of
from the Thun.
merchandise.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the second question is, what is ecosystemic craft? Absolutely, yes, is in terms of sustainability. The Lennet group also went into the B Corp certification, and they are very keen into the social impact, for instance, through the foundation in relation to the ill children, in supporting their process of healing by creating these labs in the hospitals. They also interested in the environmental impact, so the design logistic process to be as most sustainable as possible. And also for the governance aspect, they redesigned the business governance, and this was also supported by consultants. So they are still, and they created the social report of the impact that they went through. So absolutely, yes, there is this strong element of sustainability.
So Emanuela, just one more question. This is so interesting, your study. So did you also go into what were the elements of the family which supported all of this, as in the values, or what were the elements of the family subsystem which actually supported this kind of a transition from one stage to the other? When there was a generational change, what were some of the changes that impacted these?
So we recognize some differences across the transition from generation 1 to generation 2 and generation 2 to generation 3. In generation 1 to generation 2, the son was very much exposed to the art of the mother. So he cannot mold that by himself, but he can immediately recognize, for instance, a product to understand whether it is consistent with their traits or not. So we have interviews when they say, when the second generation was still involved, each product that went into his office when it was designed for the first time, and he was looking and let's say, no, you need to take these edges off, because in our product sign, we don't allow to have edges. Every line needs to be curved.
Right.
In the switch between second generation 2 and generation 3, this has changed a little bit, because generation 3 was not exposed to the same art aura as generation 2. So they had to code it. So they created a list of coding of the product, and still generation 3 is able to recognize the product sign, but relying on this formalization of the codes. And for sure, there is a strong link with the values, family values, but also local values. For instance, the environmental impact and sustainability is a trait that in that area, which is a mountain area, very much linked to nature, is strongly rooted. So although they diluted the local roots in moving away from the same region, they still keep being connected with this value of environmental sustainability.
Wow. All right. I'll come back with some more questions. Maybe we want to let the others ask some questions.
Sure.
Yeah, I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you, Manuela. Very interesting case. I didn't hear about it earlier, so I was very interested in hearing today. Now, my question, and this is a broader question as I look at craft research. What is the significance and the generalizability of these findings to broader debates in entrepreneurship and family business? I see some, but I wanted to hear you elaborate a little bit more, especially as I look at this, perfect that you're on this slide, because these different transitions, are they something that families and business families go through repeatedly so that we can maybe refer to others moving to the same way? Is it confined to the field of the craft sectors, or is it something that we can extrapolate to others? So if you may elaborate a little bit more on what do we really learn, from this study that can be useful. For example, to me, I'm a family business researcher, not particularly interested in craft per se, not yet. After this paper, I may be more, but I wanted to hear, what do I learn here that I should be keeping with me as I do my own research?
So in terms of the family business field, I think that the trait that characterize our case, and that can be also extend beyond the craft element, is this strong connection with the roots. So in the literature of family business, there is a debate on tradition versus innovation, but also this element of legacy that it's not very clear what it relates to. It's the family legacy, it's the business legacy. Here we have a formalization of what the traits of the legacy are. So they have already formalized not just the product sign, which are an element of this legacy, but also what it means to be a Thun. So this is a part that even when generation, that's what they said in the interview, when generation 4 will come, for sure they need to contextualize this value under the environment wherein they are embedded. So for instance, the first transition is from the 50s until the 80s. So already in the economic environment, there was a strong evolution. And how it is shaped in the reinterpretation of the list of the family traits, it's something that can be thick but reinterpreted. And this reinterpretation across phases is still related to these mechanisms. Understanding how you reinterpret your values in relation to distilling, diverting, diluting, and dropping is crucial in the evolution of the interpretation of such. So as for the entrepreneurial aspect, entrepreneurship, it's very interesting because this company has grown so much from being an atelier of 2 people into a conglomerate with 1,000 employees. So this is the type of entrepreneurial development and growth rates that you can understand by not just growing, for instance, through merger and acquisition that might dilute your characteristics, but still keeping consistent with what was the core business and then expanding it into, but also in the merger and acquisition they have conducted, they are always related to what is the core characteristic of Thun. So they're not just diversification oriented, but they are merger and acquisition that are very much linked to who they want to be and also the craft elements as well.
Thank you. Very clear. Thank you. Very interesting also. Congratulations for the fine work.
Very detailed work. Any questions, Yashasvi?
No, ma'am, no question.
Question. Sorry.
Maria?
Yeah, I have a question. First of all, thank you, Emanuela, for the kind presentation and congratulations on the study and good luck with the submission.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Do you think that the results that you have are dependent on the industry that you are analyzing?
Not really, because if I think back also to the study that we conducted in the entrepreneurship theory and practice, that was more encompassing the food industry, the beverage industry, the watches industry, and these traits were not that different. Even in the terms of like the food industry that is very far from the one that we are considering, these traits could be depicted similarly. What I think it's kind of a little bit related, it's the context, because this transition that as encompasses almost 1 century is very much linked with the economic development that Europe has lived in the last 100 years. So it's interesting to see whether the historical and social development that we have gone through that has supported this evolution, and you can see many businesses that have evolved during the economic boom of the 80s in Italy through the same trajectory, like being small businesses and becoming medium, large firms, whether this can be also exported to some other context. And it would be interesting, for instance, to study Indian craft businesses to see how they've evolved, whether these mechanisms can also be identified there.
I doubt whether there are any Indian businesses, craft businesses, which are conglomerates. I doubt very much. I don't think there is any one of those because they're still very, very local or at best national. You know, so as I was listening to you, I was just thinking about my own class, which I was doing last week. There is this, I don't know whether you're aware of this garment called saris. That's the Indian garment. It's about 5.5 meters and you just drape it. There's not a
Oh,
single.
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't get the word. Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah. So this large company, which is called Nalli's, so they have about 39 branches, including some abroad. They started off as a family of weavers, and then they were able to kind of grow their entire business, and today they have it online as well. They have a presence in multiple countries, including UK and Australia and so on and so forth. But I still don't think that it would be at this level as what we are looking at as the Thun. So very, very interesting. But I just wanted to ask you a couple of more questions, Emanuela. One was, of course, the
Sure.
generalizability. Joseph asked that question. If you can just, what were the kind of documents that you said you studied 5,000 documents? Yeah.
500.
500. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was 5,000. It was like mind-boggling. Okay, 500 documents. And these are documents which I'm assuming these are all in Italian, right? Okay, sorry.
No, they're also in English.
Oh, they were in English as well. All
And
right.
some are also in German. As I told you, that this is the crossroad between the Austrian and the Italian border. So the spoken language in this area is more German than Italian. So some of them are also in German.
Great. So, could you just tell us about this this abstraction of the integrative model, as you're calling it, the data analysis? If you can just throw a little bit light on this.
Yes, of course. So as I told you, we first temporarily bracketed the timeline to identify the different phases. Then we went into the identification of the craft configuration. But at that stage, it was very descriptive because it was looking into what was the craft in that specific phase. And in order to move from this descriptive and static way of looking into these temporal bracketed phases, as they were like single cases on their own,
Yeah,
we started with axial coding, so understanding what happened across the different phases. So how you move from one to the other, what was preserved, for instance, from phase 1 to phase 4, or sorry, from configuration 1 to configuration 4. So it was preserved across time, and what instead was diluted, dropped, diverted, that was changed, because the real element that was preserved as the same. If you look into this angel, for instance, and you go into a Thun retail, you still find the same product with the same shape on the shelves. So there were elements that were preserved over time, but other were transformed. So in the axial coding, we try to identify these elements and to distill the different form mechanisms, and then create a model that was able to depict the mechanisms together with the phases and the configurations in such a way that is not so much linked to the context of the case itself, but abstracted to something that can also be relevant to analytical generalizability, so beyond our study.
Sure. All right. So, and this is just a single case study, right, Emanuela?
Yes, it's a single case study, and within that, we identified these different configurations, and we treated them as singular phases to identify the evolution. So the process through which you move from phase 1 to phase 4.
Very interesting. Thanks so much, Emanuela, for that. Any other questions?
Thanks a lot.
Any other questions? Paras has dropped off, is it? Lokesh? Sridhanya? Okay. If there are no more questions, then I think we will call this an evening and a lovely research presentation by you, Emanuela. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for inviting me. It was a great pleasure to be with you, and I hope that we can see each other in the near future.
Yeah, I hope to see you in November when we are there in Milan again.
Look forward to do it again.
All right. Thank you, Emanuela. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, Maria.
Bye, Maria. Bye.
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 See you.
Bye, all of you. Thank you very much.